Welcome back to CBS News Texas here at 5 o'clock. And we're continuing now to work to get answers, of course, after that deadly collision between the Army helicopter and the American Airlines regional jet last night. And as we all have watched the video now of the crash unfold, the collective question is, how could it have even happened? And Nicole put it best earlier, in this day and age with all the technology we have. So we know a definitive answer is a long way off, but we do have known quantities that can help guide investigators, and we'll dive into that a little bit. Local aviation accident investigator, this is Bill Lawrence. Bill, thank you, first of all, for being here with us. Appreciate you taking your time. So first and foremost, 3-decade-plus career Marine Corps aviator, now accident investigator, but you specifically have flown that same, what is known as Route 4 along that eastern corridor of the Potomac, correct? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I spent 10 years at the Naval Air Test Center in St. Mary's County, Maryland, about 50 miles south of Washington, and one of my favorite things to do was to get in a helicopter and fly through Washington. It was perfectly legal, and still is, for a helicopter to fly up the Potomac River and then up past Georgetown and then on where you're going to go.
Right, but always in a type of airspace that's somewhat congested, it's busy, and there are limitations, especially for altitude for the helicopters, right?
It is busy. There are defined routes that you have to adhere to, and there, just as there are routes for the fixed-wing aircraft as well.
Right, so based on what we know, approach for the American aircraft seems stable. When we look at the ADS-B data, they seem to be all good. The controller says to the helicopter pilot, do you see the regional jet? The acknowledgement on the radio is, I do see the regional jet. Those are known quantities. So with that, what questions in your mind as an investigator rise to the top that you need answers to now?
Well, the first thing is, what did the pilot actually see? There was another regional jet that had just landed just ahead of the one that crashed. Did he see that one, or did he see the one that crashed? We'll probably never know.
And you've flown on that southern area of the Potomac there. There is a somewhat of a sea of lights on the ground there, correct? And at 400 feet above the ground, you're right in line with seeing all of that. Which could be confusing, is my point.
Well, there's a lot of lights. They're multicolored lights. They're flashing lights. They're every intensity and color and that they can be, and it is confusing. And the only way you can tell the aircraft lights from the other lights is the way they're moving back and forth.
Right. Does the FAA, and this goes to the point of concern for today's traveler, there's understandably a lot of people look at this and are freaked out now about even getting on an airplane, right, which is fair. Does the FAA have any authority right now to do any kind of mitigation in that corridor around that airport based on what happened before the lengthy NTSB investigation concludes?
Well, they can, but the question is whether it would be reasonable and whether it would be effective. You have to know what you're doing before you do it. And right now, we just don't have the answers that you have to have. So they could do things like change the hours of operation, change the interval between airplanes. They could remove helicopters from that route altogether, except for the fact that nobody would be able to transport people back and forth.
Two last questions. It did come out today that based on a supervisor move, normally that tower controller or that tower staffed with 2 controllers for that position at that hour of day, there was only 1 controller at that time. Does that ring a bell, or does it ring a note of concern?
I'll just tell you that the role of an air traffic controller, that is a very intense job. It requires a lot of attention. It's a very emotional job because of what you do. And the supervisors that handle all of those jobs and handle all the people, they do a much better job of it probably than I would do. And you're going to have some professionals that actually understand that specific area to talk about what should or should not have happened.
All right, Bill, unfortunately all the time we have today, but some good insight from someone who investigates these kinds of things, and we thank you so very much, despite having to talk on such an awful day about an awful event. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate you letting me come.
Thank you. And of course, still so much that we do not know about the incident and the families involved. That's the true story behind all of this. The investigation just getting underway. Be sure to stay with CBS News on air and online as we always bring you the latest developments.